the rare ache that love leaves behind. There are certain people you never really move on from. You try, God knows you try, to forget, to detach, to outgrow. But even when time softens the edges, something inside you still turns toward their name in the dark. They visit you in dreams, in songs, in those quiet mornings when the world hasn't fully woken. It's not obsession, it's recognition. You didn't just fall for them, you remembered them. The first time you met, it wasn't new, it was ancient, as if some secret chord between souls had been struck again after lifetimes of silence. And even if you never said it aloud, a part of you knew. This isn't ordinary. You could feel it in your chest, that trembling mix of peace and terror, the way love can both open you and undo you in the same breath. Most people talk about love as if it's supposed to make sense, as if it's something you can choose. But you know better. You know what it's like to stand before someone and feel the ground shift beneath your life, not because they complete you, but because they wake you. Carl Jung once wrote that some souls come to love not to find comfort, but to find consciousness. And for those souls, love is never simple, it's never casual, it's never safe. When you love like that, you don't just risk your heart, you risk your identity, because that kind of love doesn't just touch you, it rewrites you, it strips you bare until all that's left is the truth you've been avoiding, that you don't love to be loved back. You love to remember who you are, and sometimes, that remembering hurts, because the person who awakens your soul isn't always the one who can stay. They appear like a comet, blinding, brief, unforgettable, leaving your entire sky changed. You're left holding the echo of something infinite inside a world that demands endings. Friends tell you to let go. Therapists call it attachment trauma, but Jung would call it initiation, because when an empath, a deep feeler, a rare soul loves someone they cannot have, it's not a failure, it's a sign that your consciousness is evolving beyond possession, beyond the transactional nature of modern love, into something sacred, something archetypal, something eternal. You were not meant to love lightly, you were meant to love like a mirror, to reflect the divine back into the world, even when it breaks you open. Your love was not wasted, it was work, the soul's most dangerous, most beautiful work. And this ache you carry, it's not a wound, it's evidence of depth, because only rare souls feel love so deeply that it becomes a doorway to something greater than love itself, breath. If this pain feels unbearable, maybe it's because it was never meant to be healed, but to be understood. And if you listen closely enough, beneath the grief, beneath the silence, you might hear what the ache has been trying to say all along. You were never broken, you were becoming. Breath. Let's begin. Realization, the hidden design behind impossible love. At first, it feels like a cruel joke. You finally meet someone who awakens everything inside you. The softness, the wonder, the ache, the fire. And somehow, you can't be with them. Wrong time, wrong place, wrong lifetime. It's as if the universe finally gave you the missing piece, only to take it back the moment you touched it. You spend weeks, months, trying to understand what it meant. Was it karma, fate, coincidence? No explanation feels big enough to hold what your heart went through, because it wasn't just love, it was recognition. You didn't just meet a person, you met the mirror of your own soul. Carl Jung believed that every attraction is an encounter between two unconscious worlds. The heart may say, "I love you," but what's really happening is that one psyche is calling out to another, seeking what it has lost. He called this the anima and the animus, the inner feminine in a man and the inner masculine in a woman. We project these sacred images onto the people who seem to complete us, but what we're really chasing is our own missing wholeness. That's why the love feels cosmic. That's why you dream of them, sense their mood from miles away, or feel their absence as if it's your own heartbeat missing. You're not crazy, you're just in the gravitational field of a soul-level mirror. When you love someone you can't have, you're not being punished, you're being invited. Invited to see the patterns, the unmet longings, the sacred lessons that this connection has awakened, every quality that drew you toward them, their strength, their mystery, their calm, their light, is something already living inside you, waiting to be claimed. That's the secret Jung discovered. What you adore in another is the reflection of your own potential. You didn't fall in love with them. You fell in love through them, but realization doesn't come gently. The ego wants to hold, the soul wants to expand, and between those two forces, the empath breaks open, because you can feel both truths at once, the human longing to keep, and the divine knowing to let go. That's the paradox of deep souls. They are built to feel more than one reality at a time. You can love and release, you can ache and awaken, you can grieve and grow, all at once. You start to see patterns everywhere. The same story, told through different faces, people who appear to be opposites but carry the same energy, unavailable, distant, wounded, fleeting, and slowly, painfully, you begin to realize, this isn't about them anymore, it's about you. You were never chasing a person, you were chasing a reflection of the part of you that never felt fully met. Maybe it began in childhood, a parent who loved you but never saw you, a caregiver who gave you everything except presence. So you learned that love was something to earn, something that arrives when you overgive, when you feel for others more than they feel for you. That's why you attract the wounded, because you recognize their language, pain. You sense their silence and call it depth. You see their chaos and call it passion. You mistake your empathy for destiny. But in truth, you were never meant to heal them. They were meant to reveal you. When Jung studied these patterns, he found that the wounded healer archetype is born the moment empathy meets awareness. It's not your job to rescue anyone. It's your calling to recognize the part of you that keeps needing to rescue. Because until you heal that impulse, you'll keep mistaking emotional labor for intimacy. You'll keep calling pain purpose. So this is the realization. You attract the wounded, not because you're weak, but because your soul remembers what it's like to hurt, and still hopes to turn pain into light. But that very gift is also your initiation, because real healing doesn't come from mending others, it comes from ending the pattern that made you forget your own worth. And when you begin to see it, really see it, everything starts to change. The ache becomes teacher, the silence becomes mirror, even absence becomes sacred, because you finally understand that love wasn't asking for a result, it was asking for awareness, and awareness is the beginning of liberation. You don't have to stop loving them, you just have to stop confusing their absence with your incompleteness. They were never the missing half, they were the catalyst, the mirror that turned your gaze inward. Now that you've seen yourself, you don't need the mirror anymore. Breath. This is the beginning of transformation, the place where love stops being a story and becomes a state of being. Shadow, the pattern that keeps choosing pain. Every light casts a shadow, and the deeper your sensitivity, the longer the shadow it creates. Empaths, you who feel the unspoken, who can read a room before anyone says a word, you carry light, but light without awareness burns. You've probably noticed the pattern by now. Different faces, same feeling, different story, same ending. You attract people who need help. People who seem magnetic at first but fade the moment you stop rescuing them. You tell yourself it's bad luck, but Jung would say, it's shadow work in disguise. He taught that what we deny in ourselves will always return to us through others. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives, and we will call it fate. You see, your compassion isn't the problem, your shadow is. It's the part of you that equates love with sacrifice, that still believes you must suffer to be worthy. Somewhere long ago you learned that love was conditional, that attention had to be earned, that care came at a cost, so your nervous system rewired itself around the rhythm of emotional labor. It learned to seek chaos, because chaos felt like home. It learned to crave intensity, because silence once felt like neglect. And now, even as an adult, you mistake turbulence for depth. You call instability passion. That's not love. That's your shadow calling for your attention. You've become fluent in other people's pain, but illiterate in your own. You can sense everyone's sadness, but ignore the quiet voice inside that keeps whispering, "What about me?" Carl Jung described this beautifully. He said that the shadow is not evil, it's unlived life. It's everything we've repressed, everything we've been taught to hide, our anger, our boundaries, our desires, our voice. When the empath suppresses these parts, they get projected outward. You'll meet them as lovers who take too much, friends who drain you, situations that repeat the same betrayal over and over again, not because you're cursed, but because your shadow is trying to come home. Every person who disappointed you was a mirror for a piece of yourself you've abandoned. The lover who didn't choose you reflects the part of you that you still refuse to choose. The friend who made you feel invisible is showing you the places where you've been disappearing from your own life. The partner who drained your energy is holding up a sign that says, you're giving what you should be keeping. The shadow doesn't punish you. It repeats itself until you listen. And when you finally do, something extraordinary happens. The pain stops feeling like cruelty. It starts to feel like choreography. Every heartbreak, every distance was the soul's way of guiding you toward integration. Integration means allowing what you've been afraid to become. For the empath, that means allowing yourself to be powerful, to be clear, to say no and mean it, to stop confusing kindness with compliance, to stop mistaking boundaries for rejection. Because power is not the opposite of empathy, it's empathy with direction. When Jung worked with his patients, he would often ask, "What do you do with your anger?" Most of them said, "I don't get angry." And that's when he knew the shadow was in control. Because unexpressed anger turns into chronic guilt, and chronic guilt turns into self-erasure. That's what happens to empaths. They swallow every conflict, every unmet need, until their own light starts dimming under the weight of their silence. But here's the paradox. When you start owning your shadow, when you allow yourself to feel what you were taught to hide, you don't become darker, you become whole. Your no becomes sacred, your anger becomes clarity, your solitude becomes sanctuary. And the people who used to take your energy, they stop finding you because you're no longer vibrating at the frequency of self-abandonment. So, no, you're not attracting pain because you're doomed. You're attracting mirrors because your soul wants to grow. Every wounded person you've ever tried to love was carrying a message from your unconscious. Bring yourself back. This is what Jung meant when he said that love is the greatest danger and the greatest teacher. It exposes the shadows you'd never confront alone. It breaks your heart so that the light trapped inside can finally breathe. Breath. You can't escape your shadow, but you can dance with it. And in that dance, pain becomes rhythm, awareness becomes melody, and love becomes art. In the next part, integration, we'll explore how to bring these realizations into balance, how to love consciously, set sacred boundaries, and transform the shadow into the source of your light. Breath. Integration, learning to love without losing yourself. There comes a point, after all the heartbreak, after all the analysis, after all the tears, when you realize something simple but sacred. You cannot heal what you still fight. You can only integrate it. Integration is not about fixing the shadow, it's about bringing it home. It's sitting with the parts of yourself you once tried to exile, the anger, the need, the longing, the fear, and saying, "It's okay, you can stay." Carl Jung wrote, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a part of oneself, but by integration." And that's what this chapter of your journey is about, learning to love in a way that includes yourself. For empaths, integration begins the moment you realize that your sensitivity was never the problem. It was your lack of boundaries. It was the belief that love means self-sacrifice, that empathy requires depletion, that compassion cannot coexist with power. But awareness changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you can step out of it. Integration is remembering that love is not the same as merging. You can feel someone deeply and still let them have their pain. You can hold space without holding responsibility. You can understand someone's wound without becoming it. That's conscious love. That's shadow work in motion. Start small. When you feel someone's sadness, pause. Ask yourself, is this mine? If it's not, breathe it out. Let it pass through like wind through open windows. Your empathy is a channel, not a container. It's meant to flow, not to drown you. Integration also means reclaiming your no, because a sacred no is the foundation of every authentic yes. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you build resentment. Every time you stay silent to keep peace, you abandon yourself. And every self-abandonment feeds the shadow again. But each time you speak truth, even trembling, you reclaim a piece of your light. There's a quiet power in realizing that boundaries aren't walls. They are the shape of your soul. They tell the world how love can reach you without destroying you. They turn your energy from a flood into a river, still flowing, still alive, but with direction. Jung said that integration requires holding opposites without collapsing into either. So when you feel love and fear, don't choose one, hold both. When you feel longing and peace, don't run from either, Let them coexist. That's how paradox becomes power. That's how love matures. You don't have to stop feeling deeply. You just have to stop mistaking depth for destiny. You can care about someone and still know they're not your path. You can love them and still choose yourself, because integration means realizing that self-love and universal love are not enemies. They're the same vibration at different volumes. If the shadow taught you pain, the integration teaches you balance. If the shadow taught you chaos, integration teaches you rhythm. You begin to move through life differently. Less reaction, more reflection. Less rescue, more resonance. Less fixing, more feeling. You begin to see that empathy was never meant to be a job. It was meant to be a gift. And the greatest act of empathy is to turn it inward, to listen to the quiet one inside you, the child, the artist, the tired healer, and whisper, "You did enough. You can rest now." You'll notice a new kind of love emerging, a love that doesn't need proof, a love that can watch something beautiful end and still be grateful it happened. That's integration. It's when you stop trying to control love and start allowing it to reveal you. Because the truth is, you were never meant to master love. You were meant to be mastered by it, to be softened by it, humbled by it, expanded by it. But now you meet love with awareness, not attachment. You know that holding on is not the same as holding space. You understand that presence is greater than possession, and that realization is freedom. So take a breath and feel this. You can love without losing yourself. You can give without disappearing. You can feel everything and still stay centered. That's not detachment, that's integration. That's the soul growing its wings from both light and shadow, breath. In the next chapter, Evolution, we'll explore how this integrated love turns into wisdom, how the empath becomes the alchemist, the one who no longer seeks healing in others, but radiates it effortlessly through being. Evolution, when love becomes wisdom. There comes a time when the search ends, when the questions you've been asking slowly fall silent, not because you found the answers, but because you've become them. That's evolution. It's not a new version of you. It's the same you, seen through the eyes of awareness. Carl Jung said that the goal of life is not perfection, but wholeness. And wholeness doesn't mean you stop feeling pain. It means pain no longer defines you. You start to see that every ache was a teacher in disguise, every heartbreak a curriculum, every goodbye a doorway. You used to think love was something to find. Now you understand. It's something you are. It flows through you like breath, rises and falls like the tide. It no longer depends on who stays or who leaves. It just is. That's the quiet miracle of awareness. You don't need the story anymore. You've moved from empathy to embodiment. You no longer feel others to know them. You recognize them because you've walked through the same fire. You listen differently now. You don't rush to fix. You hold space without agenda. Your presence has become medicine. You realize that the universe never wanted you to rescue anyone. It wanted you to remember that healing is contagious when you live your truth. You no longer preach what you've learned. You emanate it. That's what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming the whole self, where the conscious and unconscious finally sit at the same table. You are not light or shadow anymore. You are both, in balance. And with that balance comes grace. Grace to let people be who they are. Grace to forgive without forgetting. Grace to walk away without closing your heart. Because awareness doesn't make you detached, it makes you free. You begin to love with new eyes. You see that every soul is simply remembering itself, sometimes through pain, sometimes through joy. You stop labeling experiences as good or bad. You start asking, what is this trying to teach me about love? The empath who once absorbed everyone's emotions now radiates stillness, not because you've hardened, but because you've softened in the right places. Your boundaries have become effortless, not walls, not defenses, but an invisible rhythm that says, this is where I end and where life begins again. You move through the world like a quiet storm, gentle, powerful, present. And sometimes you'll meet familiar souls again, those you once couldn't have. But this time, the energy feels different. There's no grasping, no ache, no unfinished story. You can look at them and simply think, thank you. Thank you for what you awakened. Thank you for what you broke open. Thank you for what you made me remember. And then you smile, because you finally understand that you never lost anything. You were just learning how to hold what could never be taken away. This is the alchemy of love, to turn pain into wisdom, to turn longing into light, to turn heartbreak into home. The empath has evolved into the alchemist, the one who no longer seeks completion but creates it through awareness. You no longer say, I want to find the one. You say, I want to be the one who can love without fear, without need, without conditions. Because now you see, love was never something you receive, it was something you remember. Jung said that true enlightenment is not about imagining light, but making the darkness conscious. And once you've done that, you stop chasing light entirely. You realize you are the light that was buried inside the darkness all along. So breathe, and look at your hands, your heart, your scars. Every line, every mark, every memory is proof that you've lived deeply, and to live deeply is to love bravely. That's all the universe ever wanted from you. You were never here to win love, you were here to become it. Breath. In the final chapter, closing, we'll bring everything home. We'll return to the stillness beneath all stories. And remember that what you call love was never leaving you. It was guiding you back to yourself. The still point of love. There's a silence that only comes after you've said everything you were afraid to say. A stillness that doesn't feel empty. It feels whole, complete. Like the space after a final note, when the music is gone, but the sound still lives inside you. That's where you are now. The storm has passed. The mirror has done its work, and what remains is peace. You've walked through every stage of becoming, from the ache of longing, to the depth of realization, to the fire of shadow, to the grace of integration, and finally, here, the soft light of evolution. This is what awakening feels like, not fireworks, not a grand revelation, just presence, quiet, alive, aware. Carl Jung said, only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. You are that paradox now, both human and divine, soft and strong, still and ever-changing. You've learned to hold contradiction without collapsing into confusion. You've learned that love and loss are not enemies, they are the two wings that taught you how to fly. You no longer search for meaning in others, you find it in the spaces between breaths, in how the morning light touches your skin, in how your heart beats without asking permission, in how life continues to love you even when you forget to notice. That's consciousness, to be aware of the sacred inside the ordinary. And now, you begin to live differently. You no longer chase intensity, you honor consistency. You no longer confuse chaos for passion. You seek peace and find it magnetic. You're not afraid of solitude anymore. You've met yourself there, and the one you found was not broken, but beautifully alive. The people who once triggered you now teach you. The wounds that once haunted you now guide you. The moments that once destroyed you now soften you. This is what it means to love consciously, to allow every experience to serve your evolution. You understand now that love was never about possession, it was about participation. You were never meant to hold anyone forever, only to meet them fully while they were here. And what a rare and beautiful thing that is. To love without needing to own, to touch without needing to keep, to care without needing to claim. That is the language of the soul. Jung wrote that the soul's journey is a spiral. It doesn't move in straight lines, but circles inward, deeper and deeper, until what once felt like ending reveals itself as return. And that's what this is, a return. Not to who you were before the pain, but to who you've become through it. You can feel it now, can't you? That subtle light behind the ribs, that warmth that wasn't there before. It's the proof of your becoming. It's what remains after everything unnecessary has fallen away. You are no longer searching for home, because you are home. So if you ever find yourself missing them again, don't resist it. Don't scold your heart for remembering, just smile, because love is meant to echo. It's meant to remind you of the depth you're capable of, and that depth is your gift to this world. You may never cross paths again, or maybe you will, years from now, when your eyes have learned to smile without sadness. And if that happens, you'll recognize them, not as the one who broke you, but as the one who helped you open. You'll thank them silently and walk on because you've become what you were always meant to be, the living embodiment of love. And that's the secret Jung tried to teach us, that enlightenment isn't somewhere above the pain, it's inside it. It's what rises when you stop running and finally listen, because once you've listened, you realize there was never anything to fix, only something to feel, and in feeling, you remember. Breath. Love was never gone. It was simply learning your name, and now it has found you. You are the rare soul, the deep feeler, the one who turns heartbreak into wisdom, the one who makes silence sacred. Breath. The story ends here, but the love continues, because love was never a chapter, it was the whole book, and you were always its author. Breath. End.